Okay, so we're going to start making the top wing. And so just to show you at first what the parts are, the actual assembly is easy, but there are a couple of things to realize about this, and this especially the top wing, because the top wing has taper, and it has one side that has ailerons, and it also has the root that has holes in it for the little wire that comes out of the midsection. So most of these ribs, and here's the main spar, which is this 25, in this case P, DP. P is right in Polish. So this is the right wing. You can see these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ribs out on the tip are shorter, and that's because there's an aileron that goes over there and has that shape that's where the ailerons are going to go. And then there's a series of multiple ribs that are sort of all the same size until you get down to the very end here, and these ones with little holes, and these are actually numbered, and you have to be careful with them. So this one is 3, 2, 1, and then this one essentially is 0 on the end. But that's going to help these little holes line up so that we're going to get the right sweep, because remember the top wing is going to have a sweep back on it. So it's important to make sure you keep those straight, but then actually gluing them is a matter of just gluing them into their ribs with some glue and making sure they're straight. So that should be really easy to do. But just keep track of which ribs go where and set them out, at least I have to make sure I got the right number out and make sure it makes sense in my little noggin. So what I've done is add all these ribs to the spar. The end ones I used super glue, all the others I used just plain old white glue, and they fit very nicely. And now what I will do is cut this guy out. This is my top and bottom. This is the bottom because it's got the place for the struts, the holes where the struts are going to go. Cut this out, and this will form around the wing ribs. And that's going to be hopefully pretty easy, and it'll fit over these, and we'll have our right wing panel completed. So we'll see how that goes. Well, this is the first time I've ever done this, but you know how, pride and all that stuff gets in the way of model building too. Turns out that all that great stuff about putting the ribs in and putting them perpendicular to the spar made no sense at all when I actually put them up to the wings, because the wings, the ribs are going along an angle here. See? So you do not want to put them perpendicular to the spar. You actually want to cant them to one side. And so in the next little patch, I'll show you what I did to fix it. I was able to basically take tweezers and tweak the ribs so that they actually had a good angle on them, and everything's fine. But do not glue them in perpendicular. And I'll show you what I'll do on this wing, and that might help somebody do it right the first time. Now that the right wing is going to be finished, maybe my left one will go quicker and easier. Anyway, be careful out there. All right, so here it is. Now what I did was I actually tweaked them. You can't tell there. But what I ended up doing was taking the skins, held them up to a window, and drew a couple of lines down where the ribs would go. And then I tried to figure out where the piece of wire would go through for the plug-in, because that would help me locate it. And there's no way to locate anything on this. I mean, it's kind of bizarre. So what I did was I took this, I butted the trailing edge up against the trailing edge of the center section. And then I kind of drew lines where the wire goes. Then when I put the ribs and the spars down, I just line up the hole along there. I also drew a line where the spar has to go. Again, by setting it down and checking. That ended up being the leading edge of the spar, was that line. So if I lined up the spar's leading edge with there, that should line up my ribs, and those 3 ribs with holes should be at the right angle. At the other end, or the aileron end, I figured out where that was by taking the final rib and just putting it against there. The trailing edge of that rib is flat and it's up where the aileron goes. But I could put that in like that and then very easily put a little tick mark where, again, leading or trailing edge was, and then I drew my line. So there you have a general feel for what it's supposed to be. Oh, I'm just checking to make sure you could see. So then I'm able to put this up here, and again, it's hard to tell, but the ribs are canted now. But if I line it up like that, and there's little holes, you can see the holes by my finger there. Those little holes, I make them so that they are going to go up into, like right now they're not perfect, but just showing you kind of where they're going to go. The idea is there's the holes, and they're going up where the wire's going to go. And then notice the trailing edges of where the ailerons are up against the paper, so it looks good. So here's after a little bit of work. Put the bottom on with glue, and I'm just testing this. And what I'm trying to do is figure out, can I, once this thing is all folded together, stick it together without breaking anything? The trapeze is very strong, but you got to be careful, and you got to kind of figure out how to feed this through. Notice sometimes it's a little bit of a struggle. But what you do is you feel around until you get it just right. I did enlarge the holes a smidge to make sure that going in would be easy. But once you get her, there it is. And what I'm checking to see is, does the trailing edge line up? And if it does, which this is pretty close, now I just got to figure out how to fold that over, which is typically what happens. And here she is done. So folding this over is no different than any other thing I've done, but you can see there it is. It's pretty good aligned. Top wing looks good. Looks like it's aligned. Hopefully after doing this, hopefully you understand what I did. The left wing panel should be a smidgen easier. So coming together.